Well, I grew up on the East Coast, just south of the city of Baltimore. And, as a kid, I wasn't a bad kid, but I was no angel either. And the kids I ran with were a pretty tough crowd. There were a lot of fights, a lot of, I knew how to say all the words you can't say on TV by the time I was 7. I had a repertoire of jokes that these kids all taught me that were just filthy. And, I got into trouble. I wasn't always in trouble, but I got into some trouble going with some of these kids. And, my parents used to take me to church. They would discipline me when I got into trouble, and they did a great job with me. And I liked church. It was okay, but it was nothing great. They taught me that God loves me and He made everything and He was everywhere, but that was about the extent of really what I knew about God. So they sent me to a church camp when I was 10 in the western Pennsylvania mountains, and it was there that had a great time. As a camp, it had a lot of sports activities. It was all boys when I was there, and a lot of great time doing stuff. And not only had fun with the sports, but they had a really good speaker. This guy spoke at a kid's level, and he said things that were great. And it was there that I really first started to connect. His first talk was, God made you, He loves you, He's everywhere, and I'm thinking, yeah, I know that. But then it was that second night, the second day he gave a talk, that things really turned around. So Ed explained that we all know what's right to do, but we often don't do it. And in fact, we know what we shouldn't do, and that's often the stuff we do, and that God calls that sin, and that there's consequences for that. And he explained this at a kid's level, and I realized he's right. And he said, now that, even though you're made for a relationship with God, that cuts it off, and you can't fix it. And that broke my heart. And then the next day he said, here's God's solution. God came in the person of Jesus to live in your place and then die in your place. And I'd heard Jesus die on the cross, but I'd never heard an explanation for why. And his explanation was that, that Jesus suffered the consequences of what I should have suffered. Well, then the next day he said, if you believe all that's true, that doesn't make you a Christian. What makes you a Christian is when you decide to trust and you put the weight of your life into what God has done for you on that cross. He pulled out a chair. He said, this chair is meant to sit in, but if you don't trust the weight of your body on that chair, then you're not sitting in the chair. Same way, if you believe that God would take your whole life if you trusted Him, that doesn't mean you've trusted Him yet. And so he said, here's how you do it. You pray. You say, God, I know that I've done my own thing and I've gone wrong and I haven't done the things you've told me to do, and that you needed to come and die on the cross for me. I want to ask you to forgive me and accept me because of Jesus' death on the cross. Well, I was sitting we were doing this talk in this big thing called the rec room, and it was a room made for boys. It was a cement cinder block room, painted gray, the floor, the ceiling, the walls, everything, with wooden folding chairs. And it was right there, 10 years old, that I first trusted the weight of my life to Jesus. Now, I made a commitment to Him that day, and I haven't always followed through on that commitment. But God has continued to pursue me. He pursued me to that camp. He continues to pursue me. Ed really spoke on our level. But to this day, the things he said speaks into my life 40 plus years later. And it's made all the difference in my life.